for factoring review, I put together different problems of factoring. So for the front page, all of these just have a 1 in front of x squared, and so you will just do x factor. Nothing fancy with this. So I would do the first number, 1, times the last number, 8, and figure out what numbers can multiply to be 8 and get to the middle number, 6. So for 8, we have 1 and 8, 2 and 4. So 2 and 4 can add to be 6. So for the answer, it's just x plus 2 and x plus 4. And you have to write it in parentheses. Okay, one more like that. So 1 times negative 21, and we're trying to get to the middle number, negative 4. So 21 would be 1 times 21, 3 times 7. So which one can get to negative 4? 3 and 7. And you should also remember that this side have the same sign, so these are both negative. And then we check 3 minus 7, that is negative 4. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. So we would say x plus 3, x minus 7. Okay. Now I'm going to do an example or two from each section. So now I'm going to go on to number 10. Okay, for number 10, it tells you up in the directions that you need a factor. It also tells you that it's bottoms up. Okay, so we do 2 times 15, which is 30. And we're trying to get to 11. So 30 and 1, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. So which one of those can get to 11? Has to be 5 and 6. Okay, so now we write it in factored form. X plus 5, x plus 6. And to do bottoms up, you take the first number and divide by 2. But this part, you cannot divide. You cannot reduce, so you bring the bottom number up. Here we divide, and we get 3. And that's bottoms up. Okay, moving on to number 16, it says factor out a GCF first, then x factor, or x factor with bottoms up. So for this first one, we got to figure out what goes into 4, 28, and 72. And 4 can. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and make an answer box down here, because I know that when I have a GCF, that 4 has to be in my answer, that GCF. So I want to bring it down to the answer. So now if I divide by the 4, we would get 1x squared, 7x, and negative 18. So negative 72 divided by 4 is negative 18. And then I look to see what number is in front of x squared. It's 1. So because there's a 1, this is x factor. Okay? If it was bigger than 1, it would have been x factor with bottoms up. So I do 1 times negative 18, it's negative 18. I'm trying to get to positive 7. So for 18, I have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and 3 and 6. The only one that can get to 7 is 2 and 9. Now these signs have to match. These both have to be positive, but this 2 is negative. 9 minus 2 is positive 7. 9 times negative 2 is negative 18. So because it's x factor with a 1 there, I can just go ahead and write those factors down. And that's it. But in number 19, I apologize that I'm yawning. Okay, in number 19, I see that I have a number 48, 90, and 12, and I've got to figure out what goes into all of those. Let's see. So we're going to go with 3. Can divide into everything. Alright, so now if I take 3 out, divide by 3, I get 16x squared minus 30x minus 4. Now I look to see in front of x squared. I have a 16. Well, 16 is definitely bigger than 1. So this is bottoms up. And so I need to multiply the first times the last. And I get negative 64. Trying to get to negative 30. Okay, 64 would be 1 and 64. 2 and 32. Let's see, what else? 4 and 16. 5 cannot go into that. So the last one has to be 8 and 8. Alright, so which pair could be negative 30? Has to be 2 and 32. And it would be negative 32. Because we know that these have to match. And 2 minus 32 gives me a negative 30 because the bigger number is negative. So I would say x plus 2, x minus 32. My first number in this trinomial right here inside the parentheses is 16. So I'm going to divide by 16. Now in this case, I cannot divide evenly. That would be like 1/8. But I could reduce this by 2. So I would say x plus 1/8. And then 32 divided by 16 is 2. So I bring my bottom up, and I get 8x plus 1, and then I divided and got x minus 2. Okay. And then on the very back page, we've done a couple of these already before in another paper that was very similar to this, but we're just looking for our square roots. So the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 49 is 7. So I'm looking for x plus 7 and x minus 7. Okay, because 7 minus 7 gives me that 0x in here, and if I multiply these two, I get back to negative 49. In number 30, I have to look at my signs, well, the sign in front of the middle term, and what is the square root of 64? So I'm looking for a positive 8 squared. So B. In number 31, I have a negative sign, and the square root of 25 is 5, so I'm looking for a negative 5. So that would be D. So please make sure you write your letters in here neatly. Okay? And that should hopefully help you with solving this particular assignment.